Chapter 5. Interview. Purposeful Experimentation. Craig Sullivan has been blending experimentation, UX, analytics, and customer research for over 13 years, powering growth for companies like Google, Amazon, Spotify, Eurostar, Lego, John Lewis, Facebook, and Red Bull. He has helped over 500 clients to unlock the latent value and growth inside their products or services. Using a mixture of experimentation, data, user research, lean, agile, and cultural change, he's gained them over 5 billion British pounds in incremental revenue. Fixing digital leakage is his specialty, a plumber who fixes the flow of revenue and customer delight. Find him on Twitter as Optimize or Die, OPTIMISEORDIE, or on LinkedIn as Craig Sullivan. Debbie, how do you define customer centricity? Craig, it's about a deep immersion into customer problems and friction. A lot of companies spend almost all of their effort obsessing over the tiny percentage of customers who actually convert. On most e-commerce sites, it will be rare to see a double-digit conversion rate. Most averages are around 2 to 5%. Basically, you're saying that if it was a retail store, you're sitting in the back of the store watching crowds of people come in, but 97, 98, 99% of them walk out of the store without buying a thing. Wouldn't you want to spend all of your time asking them questions? Wouldn't you want to intercept them outside and ask what we've done wrong? We must supplant our internal narratives, thoughts, assumptions, and cherished notions with raw and unvarnished customer feedback. We need to actively seek out negative feedback, to worry about it, explore it, venture into it, quantify it, to understand it absolutely, utterly, and completely. When you have the continual feedback loops in place, you can start to understand where the gaps are. What's the problem for that 97% who don't do what you want? Then you can go about solving those problems. Debbie, we often see slide decks that take unwelcome news and present it in the sunniest possible way. Hey, satisfaction scores are still low, but we converted 0.1% more. Craig, there's often a vacuum here. The customer doesn't have a seat at the table. They don't have a voice. They're not represented. People are not using customers' contexts, device setups, and innate characteristics to figure out how to design a product for them. There's no connection there. We can talk about data like NPS or various UX metrics, but these are abstractions, not reality. Some abstractions are useful to give us a good summary, but they also hide a lot of the underlying raw data. Different research methods give us different levels of abstraction. I remember a meeting with 15 senior people from famous streaming platform. They had asked me to help them with UX and experimentation stuff. About an hour into the meeting, it began to dawn on me that there was something horribly wrong. I said, I'd like to go around the table and ask all of you, when was the last time that you looked at some customer feedback? When was the last time you watched a customer using a product, listened to a customer, or watched a video of a customer doing something? They all thought about it, and almost all of them said, never. Never in the time that they had been at their job. I was flabbergasted. I said all of their job titles out loud, and I said, there's no customer. You've not even looked at any customers. You're not connected with them at all. You've put all of this insulation and abstraction between you and the customers. Debbie, many companies think experimentation is, hey, a bunch of people at our company have ideas. Some might be crappy, and some might be good. Let's have engineering build all of them and release them as live experiments. Craig, all tests need prioritization and filtering. It's okay for people to have ideas and okay for us to look at all of them. It's just not okay to turn them all into experiments. Not all of them can be run as experiments. What we need to ask is, what's the best tool in our toolkit to use in this specific context and situation based on what we need to find and figure out? The answer isn't always to A/B test. The answer isn't always to do user research. You need to match the problem with the right toolkit, which will be different at different times in the product development lifecycle. Debbie, a client trying to increase conversions made web page changes and measured if people got to the next step. Getting to the next step started to seem more important than the actual conversion. The next time I looked at their page, they had stripped almost everything you could do off the page other than go to the next step. They said, "Now we can show that people are moving through the funnel." Craig, you can use a lot of these hacky techniques. They've been around since the early days of CRO, conversion rate optimization, and experimentation. You could take a stick to people in Oxford Street and shove them through a shop doorway, but it's not going to make them stay inside the store. Yes, you've shifted the conversion, but you've moved the problem further down the line. It doesn't help at all. I've seen this problem before where people will think that if you have too many form fields, that will make conversion drop, so we'll just remove all the fields. The classic example was a booking site for entertainers, musicians, clowns, whatever you wanted at a kid's party. They took away the comments field, thinking fewer fields to fill in. But the comments are where the freaking useful stuff is. Like, I'd like to check that there won't be any swearing during the show because it's a heavy metal band for my 9-year-old metalhead son's birthday. Free or cheap A/B testing tools have been like giving everyone lightsabers. You're just going to end up with a whole load of people with arms chopped off in hospital. We gave tools to lots of people that don't know how to run controlled experiments properly, so they just try stuff. I've seen it all. Tweaking stuff that's got no basis or hypothesis. A cosmic particle passed through the marketing director's brain, a random neuron fired, and we ran an experiment on our live website. Debbie, our research has determined that our target customer needs a little more encouragement. We're testing adding "good luck" to the page. Craig, I've seen some stuff like this. Tiny, tiny little tweaks. I remember a dodgy ticketing company that's always in the news for scalping tickets. They had a cart icon with burning flames saying something like, "Our website is under heavy load. You better hurry up and purchase." I told them it was possibly the most self-harmful thing that I've ever seen. Why would you say that your website is on fire? And why would that encourage people to buy? Debbie, we're bad at running servers. Please buy from us. I remember refreshing a client's product page in a private browser and getting a different variation every time. I took screenshots of what seemed to be an ABCDEFG test, but each variation wasn't a slight change. They were completely different page layouts. Craig, if you're thinking of mixing multiple ideas in the test, there's usually no clear hypothesis or critical thinking behind the experiment. Therefore, the results are going to be questionable. Often people focus so much on the experiment, but it's the selection of ideas, the prioritization, and the research that goes into the ideas. You're more likely to get cracking ideas for tests and experiments if you're doing good quality generative user research. That will absolutely stone cold give you the best tests you can ever run. Diary studies, user testing, customer interviews, and listening to people can yield huge pivots in business strategy, like, "Oh my God, we're totally doing this all wrong," or "These people need an entirely new product that we hadn't even thought of before." Experimentation is often seen as a way to tune the product, but experimentation should be seen as one of many tools that are available to you to optimize innovation, business value, customer value, societal value, supplier value, partner value, etc. If you don't work out what your experiment is doing to those metrics, you're talking about the short-termism of a lot of experimentation. Wow, we increased the conversion rate massively, but our returns rate is now triple what it was before. That's a business loss. You caused business harm. If you ran that experiment and didn't collect the impact it had on returns rate or customer satisfaction, or any metrics which would actively go against your big story of success at increasing conversion rate, then you're just running the experiment wrong. It would be like running a drug trial and saying that we only want to hear from people who feel better. It's like covering one eye and saying, I can see perfectly well with one eye, but it's not stereoscopic vision. You don't have perspective or parallax. So the data person covers one eye and says, my data is perfectly good. I don't need to measure what happens on the website because I know we fixed everything. And another person is saying, I don't really need to know if this solves the problem we were trying to solve, or whether there's a decent market fit. I'm not interested in that stuff. I'm going to throw shit at a wall and see if it sticks. From their perspectives, both of them are perfectly correct. If I'm creating a postcode lookup system, I can design the interface. I can take that into a lab, I can iterate on it and wash it largely free of defects with several user testing sessions. At the end of that series of iterations, I know I have a good product that almost everyone should have few or no problems using. But I still don't know if it will work at scale because behind that address lookup is a database of 60 million addresses. There are 10 million user searches for addresses per month that will access that database. All of my user testing cannot prepare me for what will happen when those inputs are exposed in the wild to the underlying database. Usability tests can't predict what will happen at scale when 200 million people are going to use that address finder over the next 2 years. But I can measure that, and it's when you blend the techniques, generative qualitative research, quantitative data, and experimentation, that it becomes very powerful. In some people's minds, you only do one of these, but in my world, I get to play with all three. You could grab an idea, throw it at people, experiment, and randomly iterate your way to a product. I call it drunken agile. You go out and get drunk, and then set out for home. You're zigging and zagging on the pavement. If you're spending a lot of time on velocity, you're going to high-speed zigzag across the pavement, and the distance to walk home has gone from 1 kilometer to 15 kilometers. You're having a great time. You think you're going really fast, but it's going to take you 15 times as long to walk home because you're not going in the right fucking direction most of the time. I've seen so many companies fall into this trap of drunken velocity. I tell them they shouldn't be doing A/B testing right now. They should be doing iterative user research. One startup I worked with persisted in spending vast amounts of time A/B testing rather than getting their product market fit right. They ran out of cash after 7 months. Many people persist with this idea that randomly trying stuff will get them to a better product market fit. All these growth hackers can't answer one question, which is, how did the startup grow if they had too little traffic to run A/B tests? The answer is that they got the product right and then grew to the size where they could run tests. Debbie, but that advice doesn't create cool books about startups. Craig, the best startups I've seen spent a lot of time with customer research and knowledge that finds gaps in the product market fit before they build prototypes, experiments, MVPs, or pilots. The companies hoping I can fix their problems are the ones where they never did that stuff up front. It's basically user experience debt. We talk about technical debt. UX debt is the same. You're saying, I'll worry about that stuff later. We're just going to build it now. It's like accepting, we're going to build a new car model, but we'll worry about the airbags, safety, and crumple zones later. No, they're an intrinsic part of the product. You shouldn't design a whole car without knowing that stuff. But we imagine that we'll iterate on the car. When you think about it like that, you realize that would be the wrong way to design a car or any product. Debbie, what about the MVP? Craig, that's another thing responsible for the idea that we don't need user research or a UX researcher and that data will tell us everything. Debbie, my idea is so good we should just do it. It doesn't matter what anybody says because this idea is great. I'll pay developers for weeks or months to build it. Craig, ego is the biggest problem in product design today. The cherished notion, the assumption, the I know our customers or I've worked in marketing 20 years, the presumption that a few people can mind read potential future customer behavior. Let me give you an example. If you're working for Ferrari, you will not catch the race director or CEO messing directly with the product. They're not wandering down to the engine bay and, whilst the guys are working on it, sticking their hands in there, moving things around, and offering advice. They say, I trust you. You know what you're doing with the car. You're all engineers. You know how to increase the performance of the car. I need you to get 2 seconds off the lap time. I'll let you work out how to achieve that. But this is not what happens with digital stuff. Opinions, cherished notions, ego, and assumptions take the place of user insight, research, or actual customer knowledge. There's a lot of theater going around. Design thinking theater, safe agile theater, experimentation theater. If it feels like you're faking it, then you probably are. Debbie, new topic. We still have a universe filled with pop-ups that mostly want us to join the mailing list. Nobody wants to join your mailing list. Craig, this continues to be a problem I call viewport stacking. The marketing team and others at a company are looking at their website, but not what it looks like for the customer's first visit. They get a cookie message and have to say no cookies. They get a sale banner. There's often some discount code in the header. They get a banner saying, please install our app on the App Store. And then they get this join our mailing list thing slapped on top. By the time all of this loads, it takes ages to get rid of all this crap off the front of the website. I looked at famous retailers' website recently, and their cookie message has no border between that and the header. When you read the website, it looks like the cookie message has something to do with their spring promotion. A website visit might be the first touch point with your brand, and the first viewing experience is overloaded and subpar. You have to keep clearing stuff out, and then the live chat pops up and maybe more floating modals. On mobile, many of these floating controls end up obscuring critical site functions or navigation. Sure, you can chat to support, but you can't use the menu. You can't add to cart because there's a giant box floating above add to cart. Figure 11. Screenshot of remo.co, R-E-M-O, mobile homepage as an example of viewport stacking. Pinned to the bottom of the browser is a language selector, a bottom navigation with links to the FAQ, live chat, and demo, and a support chat icon. A virtual event platform pop-up then appeared with an auto-playing video. I had 4 layers of stuff over the site I was trying to use. Debbie, getting back to experimentation, can you tell us some good reasons to test? Craig, the main one is so that you know if something worked or not and what the magnitude of that impact was. Same as running controlled trials anywhere else. You want a reliable and trustworthy answer, not your colleague's opinion. Here's one example of a good one. At Autoglass, we wanted to understand the psychology of where people were when they had damaged glass and were looking to get it fixed. We did some contextual diary studies, but we also paid a very good researcher to do one-to-one interviews with people who had broken glass that needed repair. Those interviews led to a deeper understanding of the customer. We essentially explored the psychology of the consumer as they went through this phase of resolving the problem. We discovered that this damage is a very distressing thing for the customer. They're completely freaked out and worried. They might be in a car on the side of the road. Maybe they have kids. Maybe they're a woman on their own. Maybe someone needs to drive their parents around and worry about the danger to the car occupants. But people in the company had no idea how distressing this was for customers. We discovered another thing. When we asked people what the process would be to get their glass fixed, nearly everyone said to us that first they would call their insurance company. They would then have to wait on the phone for quite a while, an estimated 30 to 40 minutes. They would then get to talk to someone from the insurance company, give them the policy details, and the rep would look it up. The rep would give them an authorization code. They would then call Autoglass, give us that code, and we would process their repair or replacement. Except that's not what happens at all. We had deals with all the insurance companies to do this stuff directly. The light bulb moment for this was huge. It led to a whole series of experiments around marketing and advertising. It was that core piece of knowledge that drove it. People don't realize that they don't need to call their insurance company first. So we ran some experiments based on acting on a piece of knowledge that we had earned from good quality research. When we thought about the photography on our site, we checked competitors' websites around the world. They had pictures of auto repair shops and manly guys with big sheets of glass, people doing stuff with drills. It was all very technical. Our first thought after doing that user research was that this is not what people want to see. Maybe it should be someone like their mom, ready to make them a cup of tea and chat it through. Don't worry, Craig. Sit down. I'll help you sort it all out. I began to experiment with imagery. One of the first things I noticed was that body language made a difference. Defensive body language postures made a big difference. How about natural, open body language? We also discovered that natural smiles made a big difference. We tested stock photography compared to photos we took of our employees and offices, which won hands down every time over stock photos. I also ran experiments testing female images against male, and I found that the female outperformed the male considerably, even when there was a predominantly male audience on the site. Interesting. The more countries I tested, the more I found that the female images worked better. Eventually, most markets in Western Europe, other than Spain, had a female image on the homepage. I spoke to my contact in Spain and sent him a picture of a woman who worked in the call center. He said to me, "She's ugly. She's so ugly I would never use this lady in any marketing." I asked what images they had, and they were all shots of oiled-up Rafael Nadal types carrying heavy equipment around the workshop. I suggested that we put it to a test. My 45-year-old call center lady, who looked like somebody's nice Spanish-friendly mom who would sit them down and get them a cup of tea, she wiped the floor with all the hunky Rafael Nadal types by 22%. People generally don't want to have sex with the auto repair guy. They want the windshield repaired and someone to sort it all out and make sure that the paperwork is done so they get back on the road quickly. We understood that emotional connection and especially that the model, their body language, and their eye gaze all made a difference. Even when we found that the female image worked better, television adverts had a male guy as the lead. Maybe we should make the new website lady the face of our TV advertising? So they made a TV ad with her, which was absolutely awesome. It did incredibly well, especially in conjunction with her image on the website. The best bit of all is that none of us knew what would happen next. We got flooded with applications from women who wanted to become repair technicians. This all came from one user research study. Sitting down and asking people about their problem, the problem that our whole business, website, service, and every employee working for it was supposed to be solving. That's where some of the best experiments come from. Debbie, what about product quality? Craig, it's my biggest ongoing problem over the last 20 years. What has the worst impact on product quality? It's a toss-up between two things: not testing with users ever, and not making the product work on the devices and the setups that their customers own. I continuously have to point out to companies that either their product is broken or some function doesn't work on a device. It might be search, navigation, the checkout form, or the Contact Us page. All of these things can be broken. The first problem is that most companies do not have a proper data-informed list of what they should test. Remember when companies had messages on their websites saying, "This site only works in Netscape Navigator"? You have to support what your customers actually have. Otherwise, you are leaving money or engagement on the table. When I asked one team about their testing list, they said, yeah, we tested on Firefox." I also find that even if companies have a device testing list, which is rare, they don't then buy the hardware to give to the teams. They're spending millions of British pounds on building adverts and changing site features, yet their teams are not given the key lens through which the customer sees their product. Does it work on a Mac laptop, iPhones, Android, Windows, Chrome, and Edge? Most companies don't know because they've never tested it. Even if they test it, they don't look at all of the different viewports. They'll say that the iPhone in their pocket is a proxy for all the iPhones that everybody in the rest of the world has. But there are a lot of mid-size and small 4.7, 5.4, or 5.5-inch iPhones kicking around. If you only test on the 6.1-inch ones, your site will probably work on 6.1-inch iPhones, but it won't work on any of the other f***ing iPhones. Many of these companies I'm working with are designing products that cut themselves out of major parts of their market because the products don't work for the devices, screen sizes, and viewports people have. Nobody thinks, "Hey, we just spent $350,000 on Facebook ads this month. Has anyone checked to see if our ads render on iPhones, where 80% of our revenue comes from?" No, no one's ever checked, and the ads are broken. Do you know who the winner is? Facebook. Facebook's and Google's business strategy is based on you doing something suboptimal with your marketing efforts. If companies increased their level of efficiency with online ads, Facebook's and Google's profit margins would drop. In another example, we saw that page views for a product list on a mobile site went up massively just on iPhones starting on one single day. I asked in the meeting what happened that day. "Oh, we launched a new site design. It was awesome." Then I asked them, what would make the page views on your product list page go up nearly 3 times on that day? The answer was, maybe people liked browsing our new design so much that they just browsed lots and lots of products. I replied, "Nope, nice try, but that's not true. Think about it." They tried various guesses, but they didn't know. I suggested that we look at what happened on Androids on the same day. It was a flat line that didn't change. Windows? Flat. Mac? Flat. Only iPhones had the page views increase massively. I told them, that was the day 12 months ago when you broke the filter and sort controls for all iPhones. In the middle of the meeting, I told everybody to take out their iPhones and go to their list of 900 products. Try it out. None of them could filter. The only way to look at their products on an iPhone would be to go through every page of products, 16 products at a time. We knew demographically that the customers with the most money coming to their site were people with iPhones. I summarized. So the most valuable customers that you have on your platform have been unable to filter your products for the last 12 months. After they fixed that issue, they didn't tell me the amount of money they saved, but the quote I got was, "Fuck me, Craig, fixing that one bug made us more than the CRO team of 8 people made us in the last 2 years." The customer is not the canary in your user experience coal mine. This is your job. It's not the customer's job to tell you that you've gotten it wrong. It's your job to make sure it hasn't gone wrong like this. Are you sure you want to move fast, break things, or ship product that contains massive defects across large swathes of your customer base? I had a meal company with a payment page issue costing them several £100,000 each month. There was a travel site where if you tried to book a journey with 2 cities, the return leg of the journey would break on about half of the devices. It was costing them about £800,000 a month. There was a ticketing site that was losing £900,000 a month. My favorite was a jewelry site where paid search traffic was just bouncing off the site. Hardly anyone was buying. Almost everybody left. Looking at the data, people who landed on a product page pinged off this site like a ping pong ball hitting a giant marble obelisk. What the heck is going on? Do people not like the product pages? Do they suck? We tested it. We went to the site, and I noticed that when I put my finger on the screen to scroll, it zoomed the product image. You couldn't scroll. There was a tiny little region of the header that you could snag to get down to the Add to Cart button, but that region was hard to find. It meant that most people could not scroll the page. That was costing them 1.2 million British pounds a month. Nobody had checked it. They spent all this money on advertising without even having a look. That would be my dearest wish from Santa. Santa, please make people do more testing. I know it's boring, but it's actually really important. Debbie, what do you think companies are messing up most often? Craig, one of the biggest things missing from how design was done 20 years ago is context. Context is everything. Is the user wearing contact lenses, running for a train, in a weird lighting situation where it's part shade, part light? Do they have a slow data connection? Where is the customer? What are they doing? What's the urgency, their motivation? What problem are they trying to solve? What's the temperature or weather? All of these things make a difference. The most perfect example of this is airline apps. Almost all of them show you the same thing on the homepage when you open them, regardless of the time or context. What should the app show me 3 days before my trip, 2 days before, 1 day before, as I'm approaching the airport, as I'm past security, as I'm boarding the plane? Imagine one app that maps onto all of these contexts. But airline apps don't dynamically handle context, and that's the problem. You can put the boarding card on the home screen. Great, but I'm not even at the airport yet. We have phones that know where I am, but you're still showing me something I don't need, and you know it. Debbie, I was traveling 100,000 miles per year before the pandemic. I couldn't believe how many taps it took me to get to the boarding card when I needed it. And when I got to the airport, I wanted to know where the check-in or agent desk was. The app doesn't know that, but the airport knows that we always assign this flight to check-in desk 217. Craig, or you have to congregate like 50 meerkats around the airport screen, waiting for it to refresh to show the gate number for your check-in. You're thinking, but this data is in the IT system. The airport is showing it to me on a giant screen. Why isn't this in the app? And why isn't it telling me when I arrive at the airport? It knows I'm here. We have GPS. For 2 decades, user context in product design has been largely missing. When someone puts in the effort, it's truly magical and incredibly useful.